This is an Alice in Wonderland, like Twilight Zone type of nightmare for the rule of law and obviously President Trump personally. And I encourage you all to pray for Trump and his family. I mean, he's a strong man. He's going to, keep on fighting. But no one wants to be found guilty of a crime, and it's a real abuse of him. So he needs the support of the American people. I don't say this because of politics. I say this because he's a crime victim, in my view, a crime victim. So let's see what you all are thinking here. I'm trying to get over to the Judicial Watch feed. Well, I don't need to do that. Hold on a second. So if you have any questions about the verdict or what comes next or what should come next or other issues related to the corruption involving the Biden regime as it's trying to jail its political opponent, come on in. Let me go to Judicial Watch here. So back where we are in the studio, the cell signal isn't as good as I'd like it to be. So we're looking for questions. People are sounding off, according to my colleagues. I share your frustration. And what I love about Judicial Watch is that we're able to do something about it, right? We can sue in court, as I referenced in the statement. We have FOIAs pending on virtually every one of the abuses targeting Trump. So we just don't complain. And of course, we've been targeted too for standing up for Trump against this abuse of power by the Biden regime as they try to jail him for specious reasons. Okay. Does this mean he can't be on the ballot now that he was convicted of a felony? I believe that is not the case. He can still be on the ballot. Just Sour from YouTube asked, now what happens? So President Trump has been released on his own recognizance, so he's a free man. Judge Merchan didn't cross that Rubicon and immediately take him into custody. And the sentencing is going to be in July. There's a date set in July, but I'm not sure what the day is. And July 11th. July 11th, my colleague says. So, in many ways, the irony of this is if the appellate court or the appeals court process works the way it's supposed to work, in my view, all of this will be immediately stayed and will just become what it's always been, a political issue. This is just a political issue. Is Trump going to go to jail over this? I don't know. I mean, it's New York, right? And I think it's going to have to take intervention from some honest federal courts to overturn this quickly. But all the lawyers are going to be telling you what's going to happen next. But the election's been compromised. I mean, he's been held hostage for 6 weeks. He's been, his record's been vandalized with this fake conviction. It's a sham conviction. And no politician running for office, let alone the presidency, wants this on their record. Obviously, it's interference. It wasn't like he did anything wrong and should have been convicted. Purely political. Can Trump still run for president? Yes, he can. So that's seemingly a big question. This does not impact the ability of Trump to be eligible for president, meaning he still can campaign, I guess, according to the rules the court has laid out under the bail conditions. Remember, he was gagged. I don't know if that gag order still applies. Now he can directly criticize some folks who were wronging him, including the despicable Mr. Cohen and defend himself. Interestingly, the Biden people leaked prior to the jury verdict that they were planning to politicize this verdict, which is no surprise since the Biden people were behind this. I mean, a top Biden appointee left the Justice Department to go help Bragg concoct these charges. Still trying to get in over on Judicial Watch. Here we are. Here we are. I can see the live feed now, everyone. Well, I can't see it yet. It hasn't come through yet. So, next up, the big event next is the presidential debate, which is next month. And of course, Hunter Biden goes on trial beginning next week over the gun charges that were filed against him in a kind of after-the-fact way by the unethical Biden Justice Department. I kind of feel sorry for Hunter in some ways. So Hunter's going to be on trial. And of course, Hunter has all sorts of information, and it was that whole process was compromised by cover-up operations for Joe Biden, both during and after the elections. So all the prosecutions of Hunter are about protecting Joe. So they're kind of throwing Hunter under the bus, right? They're kind of doing the bare minimum to appease the courts and the people's understanding that there's been a lot of criminality here. The bare minimum against poor Hunter, right? I use poor in quotes, while letting Joe off the hook. And go in here. Some more questions coming in. Forgive me. Can the rulings be overturned? Of course they can be overturned. The question is, how long is this process going to take? I don't know. Like I said in a statement, it should be treated as an emergency. But, what does that mean legally? Up in the state of New York, probably doesn't mean much. There are a bunch of Judge Burchins and Angorans up in New York, even at the appellate level. They're not going to be in a rush to overturn this, I would suspect. From Twitter, how did any of this get through our checks and balances? Yeah, it's a failure of the system. The system does rely on the honor of those involved in it, right? That's why you want to ensure that when you vote for folks, that there are folks that you can trust are at least evidently not going to break the rules and abuse their powers to jail their political opponents. I don't think the founders really contemplated there'd be that low quality of politician or political leaders put in place. And that's why they set up these checks and balances in place, right? Either at the federal level and the various civil rights protections that people caught up in cases like this have. But all of those checks and balances have been overcome by those people who put the quest for political power, following the Obama way, rewarding your friends, punishing your enemies. All of that can be cast aside in one fell swoop, and quite easily. We can never stop being vigilant for our liberty. It's always on the cusp, because it can be knocked over very easily by corrupt politicians, in this case Biden and his gang. And can we recover from it? I don't know. I think our country Our republic is teetering. Our republic is tottering. Our republic is shaking. Don't you agree? Can Trump pardon himself if he becomes next president? I think he can. I think that's a debate. Now, the pardon power applies typically to only federal crimes or federal pardons. He would be protected from prosecution for federal offenses. There's an argument that state offenses won't, he's not immune even if he pardons himself from state prosecutions. I mean, the real question is Biden, can he pardon himself? Because under these new rules that have now just been created to go after Trump and convict him of 34 felonies, every politician in America can be prosecuted for engaging in campaign politics. The new theory is that if you take any step to elevate a story, decrease the visibility of a story, that's a federal election crime that can be prosecuted at the state level. Now, that sounds absurd, but Trump's facing jail based on that very theory. Now, a Republican prosecutor is going to do that? Is it going to be one for one, an eye for an eye? I don't think so. I mean, those 51, I was on Benny Johnson's show today. I don't know if you follow Benny. But I was making the point, maybe those 51 deep staters, intelligence officials who signed a letter to suppress the Joe Biden story, the Hunter Biden laptop story, to help Joe Biden in the election, was that a campaign finance violation because it wasn't reported? It used to be no. Well, Alvin Bragg just said it is. A jury just said it is. This is the mess we've made. Can the Supreme Court interject? I don't know. Eventually, depends how quickly it gets up to the Supreme Court and in what fashion. Can this actually help Trump win? I don't know. I don't know politics. I'm here as president of Judicial Watch. We're a 501c3, but playing my, just reading the newspapers. Evidently, Trump's poll numbers seem to have gone up despite all of these politicized prosecutions of him. Is it because of that, or is it because of other things happening in the economy and disaffection with the fact that Joe Biden has evident signs of cognitive decline and physical decline that makes him not a good fit for president? Could it be something like that, or it could be just inflation? I don't know. But certainly these convictions, well, these prosecutions, and now I would submit a conviction, probably isn't going to make much of a difference one way or the other. Of course, Trump, the Trump campaigns have kind of broken all the rules about politics. But my guess is, generally speaking, you don't want to get prosecuted and you don't want to be convicted if you're a politician. I mean, if politicians thought that being prosecuted, being indicted, or getting convicted would be helpful, they'd be lined up at the courthouses confessing to crimes. And that's obviously not going to happen. So I don't see that we're on. Are we still on Twitter? Are we still on Instagram Live?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not getting it on my phone. But like I said, I'm stuck back here. So what is Judicial Watch doing? Next up for Trump isn't necessarily, there's the sentencing hearing, so they're going to be filing appeals, and I presume even before the sentencing in July. But he's facing harassment from the Biden regime directly here in Washington. That's where we are. and down in Florida over the documents case. Now, the Supreme Court's going to make a series of rulings that may affect both cases. One, a ruling probably by the end of next month, June, that is going to reflect on whether this obstruction of an official proceeding applies to the law related to that, which has typically been used to deal with evidence tampering in criminal investigations. Let's say you've got documents and check ledgers, and you tear them up because you know there's someone looking for them in a court where investigators are looking for them, and you tear them up. That's what that is supposed to, the law typically has been used to prosecute. Well, under the Biden regime, they changed the interpretation and application of that law to mean if you're protesting in a place you're not supposed to be protesting, you're in a government building, you're obstructing a official proceeding and tampering with it. And the Supreme Court's going to be like, well, that's not what the law is supposed to be. And if you're interpreting the law that way, there could be significant First Amendment concerns. And of course, Trump is facing 2 charges on that. Again, fake sham charges, but as we're seeing up in New York, once you're charged, especially in these left-wing jurisdictions, you are likely to be convicted if it goes to trial. And the other big case that the Supreme Court's going to be hearing is the issue of, or it's already heard, whether the president has immunity from prosecution for official acts in office. And does that immunity does he keep that immunity after he leaves office? Now, it seems to me that it's axiomatic that if you take the position that it's unconstitutional to charge a president for crimes that he's committing or for crimes related to his official acts, you know, the Constitution allows him to be president. He can't be criminalize his being president. But you can do it the day after he leaves office? Well, obviously that means you don't have any protection at all. And that could impact both cases as well, because some of the decisions related to his handling of documents occurred while he was still president of the United States. So there you have it. So it's a bad day for America. Pray for America, but continue to push these issues. Support Judicial Watch, because we're not just talking about these issues. We're in court with Freedom of Information Act lawsuits to uncover government corruption, expose what Biden's doing in terms of corruption, expose what I consider to be the criminal abuses of power targeting Trump. FOIA lawsuit after FOIA lawsuit. And the government, the Biden administration, hates us for it. They called me before a grand jury in retaliation for speaking up and speaking out, and for Judicial Watch speaking up and speaking out and asking questions and suing for records on this abuse of Trump. So I encourage you to support our work if you're concerned about this verdict. And of course, let your members of Congress know, what are they going to do to punish Bragg for this abuse of power? Are they going to keep on funding that jurisdiction with federal money, even as they run roughshod over the civil rights of American citizens and try to interfere with effectively interfere with our elections? And of course, get the word out to your friends, your family, and other fine Americans, so they understand what's really happening in this abuse of Trump. So with that, I'll be here tomorrow with our weekly update. I encourage you to tune in. And thanks for joining us. Pray for America, and I'll see you here tomorrow.